Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Sam Hurst and this is the third in our series for October of A Gothic a Day Tempts the Vampires to Stay, where I introduce a Gothic book in under 5 minutes. Theoretically, I've not managed it yet. Introduce the book, why I think it's important, describe a little bit of the plot, and also think about some recommendations for other reads. Now today I'm going to be skipping a little bit the chronological order in which I've been working so far, but I'm sticking in the 18th century and I'm moving on to one of the most famous writers of the Gothic from the period, widely recognised by critics today as incredibly influential and by her peers, often known as the mother of the Gothic. If I haven't given you enough clues yet, I'm of course talking about Anne Radcliffe, whose body of work was really written in the 1790s. During her lifetime, she published 5 novels and a travel journal, and after her death, there were a couple of extra posthumously published works. Her most famous novel is probably The Mysteries of Udolpho, but I'm not going to be talking about that today, nor am I going to be talking about an obvious choice like her first novel, The Castles of Athlin and Dunbayne. Rather, I'm just being quite self-indulgent and picking my favourite, which is The Romance of the Forest from 1792. So this is her third novel after A Castles of Athlin and Dunbayne and A Sicilian Romance, and for me it's really the start of her more mature writing, where we're beginning to really see fleshed out her signature Radcliffean style. So what is The Romance of the Forest about? It's about an orphan called Adeline, and we meet her in incredibly exciting circumstances. This has one of the most exciting openings of a Gothic novel for me, and particularly of a Radcliffean novel. Quite the contrast to the 100 pages of walking around in the mountains in Mysteries of Udolpho. In this one, we're following the Lamotte family as they flee from Paris for dodgy dealings and debt. And as they're crossing a moor, they arrive or they find this sort of broken down, quite suspicious looking dwelling. Going in for assistance, it's filled with ruffians who hand over this girl, Adeline, a young lady, to Lamotte and tell him to take her away. Now, what on earth is going on? We're plunged into a mystery straight away, our attention grabbed. We later learn that Adeline was an orphan brought up at a convent, and the man she believed to be her father was actually the henchman of the evil uncle who had killed her family. He had taken her out of the convent expressly to kill her, but had not been able to do so, and so had given her to Lamotte. Now, of course, fleeing for your life with somebody who has been convicted or has been cast out for debt and dodgy dealings is not the best start to your new beginning, but it all ends up okay. They move into an abandoned abbey, as you do. There, Adeline learns the secrets of her past and her father with the help of some prophetic dreams and arguably a bit of a friendly ghost. But there is also a motif of persecution, because her dastardly uncle Mazzini finds her. Not knowing that she's his niece, he attempts to seduce her. However, there is on hand a hero who rescues her. Theodore doesn't rescue her very successfully, manages to rescue her for about a day before he engages in a pointless duel and is court-martialed because the person he fought a duel against was Mazzini, who happens to be his commanding officer. Fail. Anyway, Adeline is rescued eventually by a servant, meets up with the noble Leluc and his family, just happens to be Theodore's dad, sort of a Protestant bastion of respectability and good religion. By the end of the novel, the revelations about her father's death have led to Mazzini's imprisonment and eventual death. Theodore is freed from his court-martial, and everything ends happily, with Adeline getting her inheritance. Now, what we're seeing here are many of the elements which will become really key to that Radcliffean Gothic, was often thought of later as a female Gothic, although I don't love the term, as we know. We've got the heroine in peril, and we have this motif of the fairly useless sentimental hero. But perhaps particularly interesting is this motif of financial threat and financial independence. Often when we're thinking about the Gothic, we think about the sexual threat posed by male villains. But in Radcliffe, there's a consistent emphasis on inheritance, the ability to inherit and the ability to have financial freedom, which is consistently being threatened by the male villains in the texts. So, If you enjoyed this, you might enjoy some of Radcliffe's other works. It's a little bit earlier than the Mysteries of Udolpho, and we see in embryo some of those techniques which would make the Mysteries of Udolpho so famous, including these kind of discursions on the sublime and the use of poetry. Now, for my taste, The Romance of the Forest is all the better for having a bit less of that, but if that's what you enjoy, you might like The Mysteries of Udolpho, which is a convoluted novel with various subplots and definitely worth the read. My second favourite Radcliffe, though, would probably be The Italian, which was her last novel and is much tighter in terms of both plotting and description, and contains elements of real terror, including a trip to the Inquisition. So those would be my two recommendations, but I'm always happy to recommend literally every Radcliffe novel. Bye.